Welcome back to Flight Past, and you'll find us in the, I think it's the Little Alps, or the area just north of Caen into the Alpine, lower Alpine region, and we're following this road below us here, which is the route Napoleon. It's the route that Napoleon takes on his way back from after leaving Elba. Is heading back to Paris. He sets off on the 1st of March, and we're heading to the Dauphine area, Grenoble. He's trying to avoid Provence and the Marseille region. He's trying to, because they're Royalists, so he's trying to get to his area where he knows there's some loyal support. And he crosses the Alps in his sort of Hannibal kind of way in late winter 1815, trying to I don't think necessarily get quickly to Paris. He knows the news of his arrival is ahead of him. The news reaches Paris within about 4 or 5 days. It reaches London in 9 days, and he's just coming up on this wave of support. As we said, he gets to the gap at Lafray. The pass there, he's blocked by the 5th Line infantry, and they are off. He offers them, says, do you not recognize me? You can shoot me if you want, and they don't. They come across to him. So his troops by Lafray, which will be coming up to soon. Just get over this mountain ridge. His troops have gone from 1,000 odd troops to somewhere in the region of 4,000 by the time he gets across this section of the Alps. Jackie, good to see you. So the French troops, they're not accustomed, of course, to disobedience, even though they, and they weren't likely to play a subversive role, but they are swayed by the civilian reaction to Napoleon's return. A large proportion of the officers were loyal to Louis XVIII, and they would do their duty up to a point. But when no one fired a shot when offered, there was no will for the officers and the soldiers to resist. So news reaches Vienna, where the Congress of Vienna is being held, and we spoke that's where Wellington had been sent to as a sort of ambassador. An urgent dispatch is sent to the Austrian consul at Louvain, who's it's from the Austrian consul at Louvain to Metternich, which simply states that Napoleon has disappeared from Elba. And Metternich, he confers with the other Allied ministers, and he and their sovereigns, and they agreed to mobilize troops. But they're not sure where Napoleon has landed. So we're coming up to one of the high passes here that he would have crossed over, the Col de la Cour. And the first, as I say, the first point of actual confrontation between Napoleon and the authorities. A lot of these local authorities were just not prepared to stop Napoleon. His first confrontation is at a place called Le Fray, which is about 15 miles to the south of Grenoble, which is quite a long way to go. So we'll just enjoy the scenery for now. I've got the route planned. The actual words that he said to the troops of the 5th, this is from a correspondence, volume 31, which is, there's a 32-volume correspondence of Napoleon, and he's from this on page 51 of volume 31. He says, the soldiers of the 5th, you can shoot your emperor if you dare. Do you not recognize me as your emperor? Am I not your old general? And seeing the soldiers beginning to waver, he continues and says, it is not ambition which brings me among you. The 45 best heads of government of Paris have called me from Elba, and my return is supported by the first 3 powers of Europe. So he's actually lying to his troops there. He's sort of saying that he's been called back, but this is a lie. And you don't see this quoted when you watch the film Waterloo. It's all like, shoot me if you want to, but don't you remember these battles? But he... So he lies, basically. He says, I'm being called back, you don't want to get in the way. And they cheer and join, break ranks, flocking forward and crying, Vive l'Empereur. And it's this point that the adventurer becomes the prince, the brigand becomes a general again, and public opinion sways. He then, after this incident, he's 15 miles south of Grenoble. He then enters Grenoble about a shot being fired. In fact, the gates are open for him, and the the citizens rapturously welcome him, and suddenly the Bourbon insignias have been removed, and the tricolour is bedecking the town. And then from that point, then the news is then spreading that the emperor is back, and his journey to Paris becomes a sort of a jubilation, a celebration. And he's even to the point, from Grenoble to Paris, he's even sending out feelers towards the Allied governments, hoping that their combination of their own political division and their disillusionment with the Bourbon government would basically mean that they accept him as the de facto ruler of France, and he can put some promises down of that peace will be continued, but he will be the ruler. On the 11th of March 1815, this is 4 days after where are we going here? I'm just going to pause here to just see where we are. Yeah, we just go round this this mountain. I think we are coming up on a place called Digne, D-I-E-G-N-E. We'll go around this way. I'm not quite sure. There's the route there, but we're not quite sure the actual road. We could possibly be this one below us. Wonderful scenery here. This actually might be photogrammic. That ridge looks great. Probably be very good gliding area around here. So yeah, Wellington is receiving the news around about the 11th of March in when he's in Vienna. He tells Castlereagh, and I quote it, he says, "It's my opinion that Bonaparte has acted upon false or no information, and the king will destroy him without difficulty and in such a short time." But he does add to his letter a word of caution, which says, if he does not, the affair will be a serious one. So at the time, 11th of March, I think Wellington realizes that the forces that Napoleon has is small and should be dealt with, but he is obviously concerned with the loyalties of the French troops, and so he is showing foresight into there might be a serious issue ahead. On the 13th of March 1815, the assembled powers that were in Vienna during the Congress of Vienna there we go, that's Dean over there. We'll head that way. They issue a formal declaration and declare that Napoleon's invasion of France is an illegal act, and which avoids the Treaty of Fontainebleau, which is which was the treaty that had Napoleon had agreed to go into exile. The Treaty of Fontainebleau was signed on the 11th of April 1814, and it was between Napoleon Bonaparte and representatives of Austria-Hungary and Bohemia, as well as Russia and Prussia, and it ratified basically that Napoleon's rule as Emperor of France would cease, and sent him into exile on Elba. The agreement of Fontainebleau, the Treaty of Fontainebleau, contained 21 articles, and this stripped Napoleon of his powers as a ruler, but it allowed Napoleon to and Marie-Louise to preserve their respective titles, but they denied Napoleon and his family and his succession were basically prohibited from ever attaining power in France again. This is the treaty that established the island of Elba as a separate principality, which would be ruled by Napoleon. And it also allowed it to have its own flag, to be recognized by foreign powers, but only France was allowed to assimilate the island. So, like I said in a previous episode, the terms of this treaty were amazingly lenient, I would say, to someone who's literally waged a sort of a world war against people, and maybe they feared making him a martyr. I don't know. It's in this treaty that Napoleon would cede his estates in France as well. He returns all the crown jewels to France, but he was given his bodyguard as part of the deal. Interestingly enough, got a bit of a weird effect going on here. just when I mentioned all those countries that ratified the agreement, the UK, Britain, wasn't one of them. And Britain was position on Napoleon was that it was the French nation was in a state of rebellion, and that Napoleon was an usurper, and Lord Castlereagh didn't sign on behalf of the Britain because he wouldn't. To do so would be to recognise the legitimacy of Napoleon as an emperor of France. Now, during this Treaty of Fontainebleau, the Allies declared their support for the Bourbon King, Louis XVIII, and he offered their support in case of any attack. And when and what happens is, by saying that it's an illegal act by Napoleon, the Allies are not declaring war on France. They're basically declaring Napoleon as an outlaw. So treating him basically like a common criminal. So he had broken the convention that was signed, that established him as an independent sovereign of Elba. He forfeited his claim for to be that leader of the island, and he was therefore considered an outlaw. Congress of Vienna, the resolution passed declaring Napoleon as an outlaw. They called him a Vindicte Publique. And this was signed by Russia, Spain, Portugal, Sweden, Prussia, Britain, and Austria. So what does this actually say? Let's read what that says. It basically says, in reappearing in France with projects of troubles and upheavals, he has deprived himself of the protection of the laws and manifested in the face of the universe that it cannot have peace with him. The powers declare that Napoleon Bonaparte is placed outside civil and social relations, and that as an enemy and a disturber of the peace of the world, he has delivered himself over to la Vindicte Publique. This declaration brought condemnation from the Whig MPs in Parliament. Samuel Whitbread, who was an MP, argued that the declaration was unconstitutional and that the public justice would really mean public vengeance and would condone assassination. And it was meant basically as a political tool to demonstrate the illegitimacy of Napoleon's new regime to the French people. So it's an interesting piece of law. So we've got major countries of Europe. They're not at war with France, but they are at war. Well, not even at war, but they are declaring. I suppose they're declaring war on Bonaparte himself. So, because they are declaring Napoleon an outlaw, the King of France is under the protection of Ghent, and technically this means that the I suppose in the sense of the 17th century, 19th century, the Allies are restricted in their ability to cross the border. They're not at war with France. They can't, under their own sort of rules, they're not. They shouldn't cross the border, and so they can't go on the offensive. Is what I'm trying to say. Right, well that seems a good place to take a quick break, and I'll get a glass of water and we'll come back with our continued flight. We're heading now to Sisteron, and we'll be coming up on Gap, and we'll show this area where Napoleon is first confronted. So I will see you in the next part.